Welcome to the last day of the conference, and I'm honored to be chairing and introducing the keynote for the day. Katja Kwastek is Professor of Modern and Contemporary Art History at the Vrije University in Amsterdam. Her work is focused primarily on post-sessional digital and post-digital art, media history, theory and aesthetics, as well as contributing to the digital humanities more broadly. She is the author of several monographs, the latest being The Aesthetics of Interaction in Digital Art by MIT Press. In this work, Professor Kwastek argues that digital media afford a particular experience that opens up perspectives for our understanding of art and media. And I'll leave her to expand upon her work. Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks for the invitation, and thank you all for being here after such a splendid dinner yesterday evening. I very much appreciate that. So yes, I am invited here as an art historian, but my main goal today really is to try to explore with you in how far the research on what I call rule-based systems in general, on the one hand from the perspective of the arts or art history, and on the other hand from the perspective of game studies, can inform each other, and I'm convinced that they can, and especially if it comes to knowledge potential. So I wanted to start with some brief thoughts about the knowledge potential of art in general, because mediating knowledge has been a key goal of artworks ever since, in the sense of visually presenting aspects of our world or of our worldview, maybe even more, with the aim of making them accessible for their viewers. And as this is also a philosophy conference, I thought I would pick an example from philosophy, which is Raphael's School of Athens in Rome, in the Vatican, which not only shows philosophers which were considered important from the perspective of the early 16th century, but also through this kind of grouping and attributes constructs a system of knowledge in a way that could be applied to philosophy. And this is a scheme I designed 20 years ago for one of my first art history classes, where I kept it in German just to give you an idea that there is a system of different schools that is represented in that fresco, actually. And of course also contemporary art can present knowledge. And again, I picked an example which tries to give a broader worldview picture, World Brain, by two French artists in a 2015 installation. And I don't want to go into detail on the work, but just to show you that it's an installation which tries by artistically staging books and film footage to illustrate concepts of collective intelligence in a worldwide network. So that's what they claim, and I won't explain this more in detail, but just to give you an idea that there is this idea of art representing complex knowledge systems. But what we are actually more interested in as art historians or art theorists is not so much the knowledge itself that might be represented in these works, but how it is represented, how it is mediated, how such works actually function differently compared to a scholarly book or some infographic. In terms of mediating knowledge, and actually I would rather say we should speak in terms of encouraging understanding or Erkenntnis in German, because if we discuss the epistemological potential of art, this notion to me seems more fitting, because understanding denotes both the process of acquiring knowledge and focuses on the fact that it's more within individual experience, exploration or research that this knowledge can emerge. So the difference between a work of art and, say, a textbook or any other more documentary approach is that the artwork usually offers more leeway for interpretation, but also that it explicitly encourages this interpretation through its aesthetics. And like yesterday, I also use the term of aesthetics here in the original term of aesthesis, this perception from the senses. And artworks very often offer particularly rich, often complex, even contradictory visual systems that are meant to be disclosed via aesthetic experience, perception from the senses. So I can't go into detail on the philosophy of aesthetics here, so I thought I'd just back up my assumptions by some very brief quotes. Hans-Gerd Gadamer, stating that art is knowledge and experiencing an artwork means sharing that knowledge. Martin Dill, understanding is actually the goal of aesthetic experience, and a bit more complicated, also a bit earlier, Hans-Robert Jauss, who comes from literary theory actually, catharsis, which for him complements poiesis and aesthesis, is the enjoyment of affects as stirred by speech or poetry and brings about a change in belief in the listener or spectator. So he's not so interested in the visual arts, actually more in literature and poetry, but still this idea that in various ways aesthetic experience can generate understanding. But of course, all three of these positions that I just used in a way to back up my statement from the side of philosophy and literature studies don't deal with interactive systems. So they don't refer to interactive systems or rule-based systems when making these statements. So what I would like to ask is this also true for interactive art? And linking to the field of research of many of you, is this also true for interaction with rule-based systems in general? So the interactive media art projects I analyzed are broad, and I won't give you an introduction on interactive media art here today. Just for those who have no idea what I'm talking about, if I say interactive media art, it's this broad field from early 1950s cybernetic artworks via interactive structures or installations, interactive environments, locative media art projects, but also net-based art, generative art, so really broad field, but they have in common that they need an active realization of a rule-based interaction offer to come into being, one could say. So the question I want to explore in the next 40 minutes, can such artworks also foster understanding, and if so, what is specific about their aesthetic experience? So, and the following slides are those which I usually show to introduce also to my art history colleagues the characteristic of the aesthetic experience of interactive media art, and they present a kind of chain of thoughts leading to the conclusion that it's highly fruitful to look for help in game studies. So I'm well aware that for many of you this might feel a bit odd, or you might rather be inclined to try to think this chain of thoughts in reverse, starting from game studies. But what I hope is to show that there is a potential of cross-fertilization here, so that reading these things next to each other, these perspectives, can be highly informative. So if you like, you could even do a little thought experiment while listening to me, which is asking yourself at which point of my slides or my deliberations you would say one can easily replace the term interactive media art by computer game, and it would still make sense in a way, and at which point things differ, and I'm going to come back to that also. You might also just want to try to take the perspective of the art historian and just try to understand why it is a challenge for art historians used to deal, or traditionally used to deal with more static artifacts, to explore these more processual rule-based systems. Whatever you like, you might also just want to sit and listen. So the common credo I start with is that for researchers of interactive media art really places the action of the recipient, the viewer, the user at the heart of its aesthetic strategy. So it's not so much the object, the artifact, but really the action that is at the heart of its aesthetics. It gives form and presence to the artwork, this activity, and it is the source of aesthetic experience. But then still, we are not talking about performance art. We are talking about something that is based on a kind of technological system that exists independently from that action in the moment. And so there is something which has to be activated. It's not only the action in the present moment, some kind of material or coded interaction offer which is there independently from its actualization. So also it usually can no longer be modified by its author once it's out there. So that's also a difference, as an example, compared to performance art. That's true not only for interactive media art, for those of you who are a little bit more aware about the visual arts, there are participatory artworks that are just material, analog, ask you to jump on some boxes or walk through some parkours or push your head in some cushion or whatever. So also these request your action to be realized, but the difference concerning these technological systems is that you're confronted with this kind of black box. So you can't in any way guess what would happen if you don't interact. You really have to activate the systems, otherwise you don't get the experience. There is no second person external experience, unless of course you have someone doing it for you, but just you and the system, you have to interact with it. So what is interesting is that this black box situation we are confronted is actually raised lots of critique by art history as a discipline, because they, when interactive media were emerging, were actually hoping that this would be the realization of co-authorship, the death of the author, a kind of democratic, bottom-up new art form that would allow everybody to become a producer. And they had to realize that actually these systems were very strongly influencing, channeling, restricting the possible actions. So it was really not this idea of a bottom-up, democratic new art form. So what I argue, and this is why many people were saying, well, it's just not interesting within art history, but I argue that this idea that the technological systems actually substantially channel or restrict the interaction that is possible is no flaw, but really a distinguishing feature of these works. So ideally, the visitor, the participant, the recipient has to activate, experience and reflect upon these rule-based systems while interacting with them. And so then the question is, how is knowledge or understanding possible in this process? And if you heard me now, it probably goes without saying that art historians used to analyze static artifacts have some problems, and their methods risk to fall short in trying to come to terms with these questions. So, and this is both true for actual methods of approaching the work, so how do you actually analyze it, and for the theoretical frameworks used. So what I did, and what is more or less, the only thing you can do, is to look for other forms of aesthetic experience which are also based on this idea of contemplation, reflection with an action. And this is where game studies comes into play. It was not only game studies that I looked at, also performance studies as an example, but today I'm going to focus on game studies, which are interesting because it's this commonality of contemplation in action. The games and interactive media art have in common that there is an action predefined through rules which can be realized anytime, and that there is no co-presence of the producer and player required. And if we talk about interactive media art and computer games, it's of course also that these rules are in a way embedded in a technological system. So it's evident, I would say, that it makes sense to see how these two disciplines can inform each other. This is why I looked into game studies, into various approaches. One approach as an example, which I found particularly interesting, was the distinction of different kinds of rules as proposed by Katja and Zimmermann. Probably most of you are aware of this. They distinguish between operational rules, which are the player instructions, constitutive rules, which are the basic algorithms underlying games, and implicit rules, which are the unwritten laws of everyday interpersonal behavior, but also standard behavior in play, and we heard a bit about that yesterday already. So I think that it's very insightful to analyze these rule systems in relation to interactive media art, but especially because there are two things are specific with these many of these artworks. I'm generalizing, of course, you will always find other examples. So the first specificity is that very often there are these rule-based systems, but there is no goal. And the second is that very often these works work with conflicting rule-based systems, actually. So what I'm going to do in the second part here is to look at two case studies which are also discussed in the book that Gordon mentioned, but really focus on these two questions and also on the question of knowledge. So I've chosen two quite different examples. One is an installation that encourages the exploration of abstract graphics and sound, which is by Twemmer. Anybody knows the manual input workstation? Anybody ever interacted with it? No? And the other one, maybe a bit better known, Blast Theory's Rider Spoke. Anybody experienced that? Some did, okay. So, and I'm going to take these two as examples. The first more to discuss the rules but no goal characteristic, and the second, the conflicting rule systems. So, the manual input workstation. So, it's an interactive installation, interactive sculpture. You see a normal overhead projector first and some numbers and shapes lying around, so it's more or less obvious what you can do because you know what an overhead projector does. So you can use all these shapes or your hand to create these shadows on the board projection. What happens then is that these shadows are recorded by a video system and they are analyzed, and then sonified animations are projected onto this shadow play of your hand. So there are animated shapes in a way that are projected, overlaid over this already existing overhead projector image. And the numbers that you see that you can place on the overhead projector also serve in changing between different modes. So they are recognized by the video system then, and different modes of the system are started. So one, I won't explain all of the modes. One, as an example, immediately sonifies the shapes that the user generates. So you can really modify in a way sound and shapes in real time. So a large shape generates a low tone, a small shape then a high tone, and if you squeeze the shape, it changes the pitch and modulates the frequency. So, well, of course, the constitutive rules, the underlying algorithms playing an essential role in this interaction process because they determine exactly how the system animates the recorded shapes. And it's also interesting that the artist really tried to relate the basic characteristic of notes, which is volume, pitch, and timbre, to characteristics of forms. So volume, contours, and position. So really trying to interrelate, in a way, create a kind of technological synesthetic, if you want. So what you can do in exploring the system is really reflect on basic visual and acoustic phenomena that are embedded deeply in these constitutive rules. But then the question is, of course, as there is no goal mentioned, how is this exploration encouraged? Well, first of all, the operational rules are not really necessary to explain because they are somewhat self-explanatory. You know from your everyday life what to do with an overhead projector, and you can explore further rules just by free trial. So it's, and we had that before, this notion of experimental exploration rather that guides your interaction with the system, and I would even go further in this work and say it's really also expressive creation. Invites you to, in a way, be creative with the system. And this is why Gunnar Levin himself also says, well, for him, ideally, there is this kind of creative flow that emerges when the interaction takes place. But then again, we have to question, okay, but how is understanding possible within flow then? So how did we research this then? We actually used a methodology that is called video cued recall that has been developed by colleagues of mine in Canada and Australia working together. And what they do is that they record interaction processes, and afterwards they replay this recording to the user and ask him or her to talk over it. Of course, this is kind of artificial, but as you will see, I'll play you some snippets. This works out quite well. So you get an idea of the motivations why people did several actions and how they contextualize them, although it's of course kind of staged situation. So let me play you a little snippet of the research documentary. It starts with a short statement by the artist, because we also did artist interviews, and then 2 user interactions. The sound isn't really hard, but I hope it helps to understand the acoustics of the system also.
This feeling is just almost like surfing, or Graham Koolhaas calls it riding the bullet, but it's this experience of flow. What Mihai Csikszentmihalyi calls flow, this kind of experience of creative play that is totally, you're engrossed within, and that your verbal senses drop away, and you think to yourself, I'm just in this moment, I'm experiencing this thing. So the experience of creative flow that Csikszentmihalyi talks about as manifest in a creative medium that one is exploring, that one is sort of has some opportunities to be creative within, is the experience that I hope Sonja's having.
Interessant war für mich vielleicht doch, dass ich bin normalerweise jemand, der sehr analytisch an solche Dinge herangeht, was hier überhaupt nicht der Fall war eigentlich, sondern hier habe ich einfach ausprobiert, und durch Ausprobieren bin ich auf verschiedene Dinge eben drauf gekommen. Und das schaut doch cool aus, oder?
I think my first approach was to try and figure out how it worked, more or less, and then to use it as an expressive device. That's what I was hoping to do. I think this is the first moment at which I started really playing with it, is I realized that it was a relatively small amount of effort for a proportionately large amount of reaction or response from the system. In a way, I was sort of trying not to reverse engineer the work. So this is like an interesting tension between, on the one hand, trying to deal with it in a sort of right brain kind of way, as here, for example, just sort of playing with it, and then on the other end, sort of a left brain kind of way to try to figure out what some of the algorithmic logic and intuition there is.
Okay, so I think what is obvious that both, in a way, also emphasize that there is this idea of creative flow, but also both have very different ways of contextualizing their interactions. The one being much more reflective and much more used also to talking about such processes than the other. But this idea of, and that is what the media critic was also emphasizing, of this oscillation between exploration and reflection. So, and this can happen one after the other or next to each other, and I can't really go into detail on this, but it seems that this constant oscillation of change between absorption in the interaction and self-perception is really a key characteristic of the aesthetic experience of such works. And even Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, who coined this notion of creative flow, sees reflection really as a necessary counterpart, saying that typically a person can maintain merged awareness with his or her actions for only short periods, which are broken by interludes where he adopts an outside perspective. So there is no goal in this work. Exploration comes about as this kind of creative flow, but always interrupted, or often interrupted by this kind of reflective moments. And here it's very much focused on trying to understand the constitutive rules, and with the second one very much also exploring the boundaries of the systems. But still in a very embodied and playful way, because the rules really kind of embody the knowledge potential of the work, illustrating basic characteristics of sound and visual. So it's not yet really about conflicting rules, that you would have to position yourself in these conflicting rule systems, but rather an abstract creative exploration. Whereas the second work I want to briefly talk about is quite different also in terms of how it encourages understanding, because it's much more personal in the sense you have to give much more yourself. Many of you will know Glass Theory for their mixed reality games. This is a work where you have to explore a city by bike. And I'll just show you a short trailer of the work.
We would like you to cycle through the city, making recordings, and eavesdropping on recordings made by other people. To do that, you're going to be using one of these. You're going to have an earpiece and a microphone.
This is one of those moments when you're on your own. You might feel a little odd at first, a bit self-conscious or a bit awkward, but you're alright and it's okay. Relax and find somewhere that you like. It might be a particular building or a road junction. When you have found somewhere you like, give yourself a name and describe yourself.
So I'm starting at Oxford Circus. Not too far from Clark, no please. I'm hiding by my own church on Helmet.
Okay, so what is interesting here is really the different rule systems that are created also by the artist, because what you saw in this trailer, that there is two moments where the operational rules are actually communicated. So the first one is when people go to their desk and lend the equipment, and the basics of the basic instructions are given. But then they hear this voice of a woman that gets them into the mood in a way and explains them what they are supposed to do really within their bike ride. And we also did an interview with Matt Adams of Glass Theory, and he said that for them this is really key, because this introductory moment for them is really part of the game experience already. But it is so because many of the visitors don't really contextualize it as in-game. So they really play with these conflicting frames that people have, because they think they can induce some rules or some atmosphere into the players in a way where they don't really feel being within this magic circle of the game. So the frames assumed or constructed by the different actors, the artist on the one hand and the participants on the other hand, are not identical. And then this collision of frames, or these different frame systems overlaid, goes on once they have cycled off and get that invitation to look for a place to stop and give themselves a name, because they don't any longer cycle the city aimlessly, but now there is a kind of goal, even if not some score to be reached or whatever, but they are told what to do, so they look for an appropriate place to make their recordings. But now again, they in a way have to decide which frame system to apply, because they are asked, give yourself a name. So do they act as their real person? So do they just say who they are and make statements as truthfully as possible, or do they take an actor's role, make up a persona, and play a role within this whole bike ride? Are they willing to really, because it's really quite personal questions that are asked to them, a memory of their father, go to a place that reminds you of your father, tell me about your father, whatever, or do they just make up a fictitious story? So, and what we experience is that it's really of key importance here how the rules are communicated to get the players into this mood that they really engage with these rule systems. And I will again play you a little snippet of an artist interview and two visitor reactions here to make my point.
We put a massive amount of work into that. Weeks and weeks and weeks. And, you know, we're making a piece of work that's about sort of you trusting in us But how are we ever going to get you to a point where you'll start to tell me something meaningful? You don't meet me, all you've got is a computer on your handlebars. Why would you tell this thing anything?
It was the voice that asked me the questions that gave me the impulse to think about it. So it was that voice made me think a lot.
I always had the feeling you have heard this voice before. And it was a very, very nice voice. So afterwards, when I sat there in the restaurant and had my beer, I said, why did you answer all these questions? They were very intimate. I think it was a voice. And it was, if she would have asked me directly, I wouldn't have answered all these questions.
So you see that it's kind of, they both in a way realize that there is these conflicting frames they have to deal with, confessing things to a technological system, but also very much that the detailed aesthetics of how this rule system is communicated seems to be key. But it's not only this collision or these conflicting implicit rules, everyday life, and the operational rules of the game, but there are also frame collisions in this game in between the operative rules, the operative rules, the game rules communicated, and the algorithm of the game. Because if you look at the image above, that's this little tablet that you get on your bike, it says, do you want to ride again, or look to hide again, or look for others? So you are requested to hide, to find a position to record your statements at a calm place, but at the same time, this hideout has to have wireless LAN connectivity for you to be allowed to record a statement, because that's implemented in the system. It's this emerging map, it works with Wi-Fi fingerprinting. So in a way, there's also this idea, well, technologically, in merchant space, you have to be localizable, whereas in real space, you have to find a hideout to record your statements. So it's another form of conflicting rule systems that is used to create this complex layering, in a way. So I want to leave it with that for the second part of my lecture, just to, I hope that I could make the point that the aesthetic experience of such works of interactive media really tries to foster understanding via encouraging at least this oscillation between immersion and reflection, and on one hand through motivating an experimental exploration of the systems, or as a second possibility, and often these two go together, as encouraging people to deal with often conflicting rule systems. And this understanding as engagement with these rule systems that often mirror real-life issues, and there can be really basic, abstract relations between audio and visuals, but it can also be social relations. This is where understanding comes into the picture. So I could just close here and say that what I am proposing for the aesthetic experience of interactive media is obviously also true for computer games, because also here there are these various layers of rule-based systems which can encourage this same oscillation between immersion and reflection, obviously, and thereby also foster an understanding of these basic processes of interaction in between humans and the environment represented in the game. But I fear that this at least entails a risk of misappropriation, because I based my chain of thoughts in a way on this assumption that there are the operative and constitutive rules that create this kind of general frame of the interaction offer, whereas the real aesthetic experience is grounded in this actual event of explorative playing. But if I look into, if I want to apply this to computer games and look at statements like the one by Burkhard Malta, who says that serious gamers do not want to waste their time looking for interesting places to explore. They much rather want to understand the structure so as to move forward, to reveal new game areas, or to climb upward in the hierarchy of levels. This is, of course, also a serious goal, a serious motivation of playing, and we can't just ignore this in making the statement that the two are interchangeable experiences of interactive media and computer games. about this also in the last days, so I rather feel confirmed in my guess, in my hypothesis, that yes, in both gaming and playing there are various forms of interaction. It's the distinction between gaming and playing that Walter Kampmann makes. So gaming is more really this what he describes here, whereas playing is this more free attitude towards exploration. And both of these attitudes are at stake, I would say, in the various forms of interaction with rule-based systems. But I think what is important to emphasize is that the focus can be different. So the focus can lie or on the one or on the other, and that makes a considerable difference. So also concerning the question of knowledge potential, we have to ask if such a shift in focus from gaming to playing, or from following, successfully going through this system of rules, or rather exploratively reflecting on it, if this shift in focus also brings about a shift in the knowledge potential of these systems. So I think that the best way to search for answers to this question is that we have to ask in how far this shift is active, or in the design of the systems themselves, how the systems are designed in a way encourages different emphasis on all the gaming or the playing part, on the attitude of the player. So isn't it so much in the systems themselves, but rather in how players approach these games where the focus lies, or in the institutional context within which these systems are presented, sold, exhibited, and also researched. Because the context we're in here is a philosophy of the computer game context, so obviously this reflective part of the game seems to be find more resonance than maybe at other conferences. So this is more an open question, which I think we might want to discuss, but I would like to take my last 10 minutes, 8 to 10 minutes, is that okay? Yeah. To think this, go a little bit further in this chain of thoughts, because my impression is that this story of success in the way of rule-based systems, this idea that rule-based systems can foster understanding, does not end neither with games nor with interactive media art. But I feel that in a way we see this unfurling also in other areas of our society. And what is specifically interesting for me, of course, that it also seems to be at stake at the domain of culture, which is usually rather aimed at understanding from a distance, through aesthetic distance, which is the art exhibition, because the art exhibition actually even takes artworks out of their original context. If we think of historic artworks, they take them out from palaces and churches to position them in the museum for a distance contemplation. So it takes away any context that might have been there, and so it's really, we could say, the signature environment for distance observation, as opposed to some implementation, into everyday culture. And the reason why I'm particularly interested also in this question of how rule-based systems can blur into these exhibitionary context is because it also relates to what we have come to call the post-digital, this blurring of the digital and the analog. Because of course, obviously, these exhibitions still show artifacts, but they apply processes, strategies that we know from the digital world, or that, of course, rule-based systems aren't. I mean, they have been out there long before there have been digital systems, but it seems that the strong, or the increasing use of rule-based systems in our everyday world also has brought about new ideas about implementing them in art exhibitions that deal with analog objects mainly. So it's actually since a while that if you go to exhibitions or museums, sometimes that curators and artists have tried to reintroduce some kind of experience into art exhibitions. Usually that has been done more via this kind of spatial staging, installation art, having people walk through some nicely staged exhibition design or whatever. But more recently, I think that they really try to offer some other kind of experience of the visitor, which can really be described as at least related to gamification, to really restore some kind of performative context within the exhibition. So this is still research in progress, but I'm going to give you some examples and a very preliminary attempt of categorization. So the first is a more metaphorical approach, which we can see in art exhibitions of the last 10 years or a bit more than 10 years maybe. Things like Matthew Barney's Cremaster cycle, you might know this huge video work that has also been staged as an exhibition in the Guggenheim Museum, and it works on this metaphor of the Masonic ritual, the Freimaurer, which have to advance from level to level, and these different levels have really been staged on the different levels of the Guggenheim Museum also. So in a way you advance through the museum, also advancing through the different levels of the Masonic rites. Or still a bit more metaphorically, the last Documenta in Kassel in 2012, where the heart of the exhibition was staged as a kind of brain where all the different strands of the exhibition concept would come together, or a more recent exhibition in the Netherlands by a German artist, Markus Welk, which was presented as a kind of circle of life from birth via enlightenment to death. So still rather metaphorically, but playing with this idea of storytelling, levels, and having to work through this kind of system as a visitor. In a more literal way, we have these hybrids of performance, game, and exhibition, often using historic sites actually as a kind of natural game setting, enriched with fitting objects, and very often, interestingly, also with some kind of mythological backdrop. One example is Evelyn Kribasek's Orpheus project, who invited visitors to explore this interactive environment that she installed in a former underground bunker in Munich. The idea was to match the myth of Orpheus, or rather the questions of separation, metamorphosis, the seductive power of beauty that is at stake in that tale, to contemporary issues of post-human surgery. So one was led, or one was exploring these rooms, which are uncanny in themselves, and were staged by showing these old-fashioned medical instruments, hospital furniture, together with these fictional vestures, think back vestures, which you say, but also these QR codes, or these markers that you could activate with a smartphone and then see little film scenes which added further narrative layers to the project. So it was kind of account-like thing actually. There was no clear walkthrough through this whole experience, but it was used to enhance this kind of explorative attitude of the viewer, but still lots of leeway for individual exploration here. Opposed to that, there is groups like Machina X. Anybody of you knows Machina X? Some do, yeah? Did you see the Berlin project? Anybody? The Metatron project? So that was actually staged in a discharged police tower and dock stable at Berlin Tempelhof, the discharged airport. So it also used this atmosphere of the existing building, and it was really a riddle against the clock to save the world from God's plans of destruction, a very cliche story. It was much closer to this point-and-click adventures. You had to glide down fire ladders, unlock combination locks to reach the control room, find real objects that advanced the game. But it was still also a sequence of carefully staged spaces and objects. So the objects really had a key function within the system. They recently did another game which was quite interesting, theater game, because it was also it was about a referendum for the exit of Germany actually from the EU, which people were trying to manipulate, and you had to decide if you would have uncovering the manipulation because it was not morally sound to in a way go against the referendum by manipulating data, or if you would support manipulating the data because it was for the good goal of saving Europe in a way. But the interesting thing is that you also had to solve all these little riddles, but then in the end, the real discussion, the real dilemma thing, what do we do, had to be decided without any rules that were given by the artists. So you were just standing there and you had to arrange a kind of system within the group, and usually it was democratic voting to solve this last and really crucial riddle of the game in a way. So various approaches from theatre, and as I have to finish, just two exhibitions that really more closely are art exhibitions that resort to this kind of gamification modes. The Reset Modernity exhibition by Bruno Latour in Karlsruhe this year, where it says in the flyer, we suggest you reset a few of the instruments that allow you to register some of the confusing signals sent by the current epoch, and you get a field book at the beginning. And it says, the name field book indicates you are invited to do a bit of research yourself. In each procedure you will find a sort of workplace called a station. This is where you will find more information and where you can discuss the path of inquiry. So here the metaphor is still kind of research metaphor, but then there was Double Jeu in Paris this year also, which was really a kind of a crime story. And you got this little yellow booklet, which I brought. And you had to see all the people walking through the exhibition with this yellow booklet, because it was really the idea that you had to go through an apartment with different rooms, and you saw in these different rooms all these crime scene blood spots, little investigatory numbers and whatever. And for each room you could read a part of the story, because it was actually, as you see here, it was a writer, Frank Tillier, who had written a crime story, and then this crime story has been staged in this exhibition setting by artists and designers. So the art objects actually form part of the crime story, and you are invited to solve, in a way, the crime story. So what is interesting here, I think that it's specifically the crime story which, in a way, is ideally usable for this exhibition setting, because as a detective you still are in this role of a distanced observer. I mean, you have to explore all the signs, but you don't really become active in the story itself. You come after the fact. So, but still it invites the visitor to look more closely, to somehow feel involved, to pay attention to details. So, in all these projects, I would say the game layer is not the main one. It rather serves a kind of external goal. And if you want, this goal is also understanding. But it remains an act of reading as opposed to an act of playing, I would say. Because in games, in a way, objects serve to push the story forward. And here I would say the story still serves to feature the objects. So what my preliminary idea about this is that in all these attempts we still have not so much visitors struggling with different rule systems, but rather the curators still struggling with how to sensibly apply these things they really consider interesting, to come up with new strategies for art exhibitions. But what I also think is that it shows that it's definitely worthwhile to continue exploring this knowledge potential of rule-based system, because it definitely does not stop neither with the game nor with interactive media art. So that was what I wanted to finish with. Thank you.
We have about 11 minutes of questions, so let's go. Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much for this very exciting talk, and I was really happy that you showed us Machina X. And I was wondering, I found it rather interesting because I attended 2 different works from them, by them, sorry, and every time I was there, people tried to counter game, so to speak, that they tried to circumvent the rules Machina X set out for them, you know, in the spatial design or in the rules of the dynamics of the game. And I was wondering because with modern day interactive theater or performance theater or in an exhibition at the museum, no one would get to the idea to try things going beyond the set of rules, you know, like in a museum, for example, like with an interactive theater that you would try to, I don't know, run from the stage or I don't know what. So I wanted to ask you if you have some ideas for this, because just the people know, okay, it's based on something like a point-and-click adventure. Maybe they are also enabled, or maybe it's also for their inserted that they can counter game. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's 2 things. Well, first of all, I would say that exploring the boundaries of these rule-based systems is a key feature in any of them, and you might have more leeway or motivation to do so depending on also your state of immersion. So if you're really going with the story of the game, probably you're not interested in, or you're only interested in exploring the boundaries if you think they can help you in proceeding. But I would also say that, and that's the point which is more interesting to me in this also current research on the post-digital, as the fact that there is real objects being presented in these theater plays and it's in real environments by Machina X in a way encourages this idea of not only taking the objects which a computer game would provide in their setting, but also trying to get objects in the game in a way that were not intended to be used. So that because it's much more embedded in the real world environment, so then it's less strict the boundary between what may be used and what not, and then it's more or less natural, I would say, that people start exploring other areas.
Thanks for a really interesting talk. I think you made very clear how the examples you talked about are different from the relational artworks described by people like Claire Bishop and Nicholas Buria. But maybe you could say something about any potential similarities in the political or aesthetic goals at stake. So I'm thinking in particular about aspirations towards microtopia in relational artworks, and as Buria writes about it, the kind of countering of social atomization, and certain relational artists will try and do that by bringing about these very unstructured experiences as opposed to these relatively structured experiences of Machina X and Glassstock and so on, where they have to put in a huge amount of work to detail exactly the kind of experiential route that the participant takes. So is that in some ways a kind of strength or weakness at the same time, in that you don't have something as unstructured as, for example, Recruit Tiruvanij's serving pad thai in a gallery, which allows these microtopic moments to unfold amongst the audience, but it also seems to be very much just a repetition perhaps of everyday life, rather than a kind of structured, well-designed experience that does something different.
So you are giving part of the answer yourself, I think, which is, I mean, I agree with many of the things you are saying. I mean, I think the basic difference between many of the works I've been researching and the relational aesthetics works is that many of the interactive installations are not even meant to be experienced or interacted with collaboratively. So then we really have the interaction with the technical system only. But like Machina X or Blast Theory works, which I mentioned today, of course, this is about collaborative experience. And then we could question if in works like Tiruvanija cooking Thai curry for a museum audience. Well, of course, you could say there is conflicting rule systems there, and this is what you hear from visitor experience, where they say, oh yeah, usually in a museum I'm invited to just passively look at things, and now here I'm invited and to come into contact with other visitors and to eat, which is also this embodied experience. So then again, you could argue that there are these different rule systems, frames that he plays with in this relational aesthetics, but of course he does not implement this real scripted processual rule systems that would also advance throughout the experience. So I would also say that, well, again, I would say it's a shift of focus, really. So for him, the shift of focus is really making people aware of their attitude within different real-life situations, whereas in works like those by Machina X, it's much more also making you aware of how you react in more specific systems. Well, the referendum thing is still, I mean, you're not usually every day used to uncover manipulations of data, but still there is, of course, a real-world relevance to it, a very strong real-world relevance to it, but it's very much channeled through these systems you have to deal with, through the crop also you're playing against. So it's, I would say it's a shift in focus rather than a totally different approach.
Is there maybe more of a worry of the artist being a kind of doctor in the more engineered kind of situations?
A doctor? Why do you think a doctor?
I think there are some worries in relational aesthetics about the artist. So the situations have to be kept open, because otherwise it was a kind of an educational exercise where the artist would do something to bring about this realization of, let's say, social atomization. And so then they were prescribing a treatment or a medicine for the audience to take.
Well, that goes a bit back to what I said at the beginning, that people critique these works of being too dictatorial, of not leaving enough freedom or leeway, but I think that's what artworks are about. It's not about restaging everyday situations, but it's about making a point by making people aware of restrictions. So I wouldn't see that problem. I see that there's lots of critique against these relational artworks, also because of them staying within the bubble of the museum world and things like that. So there's lots of critique that is also necessary concerning these works, but I wouldn't say, or for me at least, it's no kind of critique that they would channel visitor interaction or restrict it.
Thank you.
Thank you for a very inspiring talk on this topic. I have a simple question. What about failure? And then a more complex follow-up. We might suggest that there is a specific mediality of computer games that arises from the possibility of failure, that then completely subverts the interpretative intentions that might have been there in the first place, or puts them in a new order, that things become significant in relation to the risk of failure. Maybe that is something that we don't have in interactive art.
Well, if you see failure as not reaching the goal,
or dying. Maybe there is no goal. Maybe the only goal is to stay alive.
Well, that's a goal. I mean, it's well, I think that there is people feel a considerable risk of failure if they're not used to dealing with these artworks, because I think they just don't get it in a way. They walk away after 20 seconds saying, sorry, I didn't get the point. So it's rather this risk of intellectual failure, maybe, or cognitive.
Yes, that also exists in computer games.
Yeah.
We can also not understand computer games.
Yeah.
But then we can also fail in a way that the machine tells us that I don't want to play with you anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's definitely. I would have to. There is. I researched some net-based artworks that really play with this also. That stop if you activate certain parts, it really stops you playing and throws you out of the game. I think the problem that might be easier than it works that are mainly software-based, so that you can play on the screen, than by these works that are also in a way materially staged, because there might be always a way out in saying I didn't fail even if the machine thinks I did, if you know what I mean.
Okay, take a last question, this one.
Hi, thank you very much for that. I'm going to, I suppose, take this opportunity to try to
ask about a difficulty which I also encountered in my own attempts at applying aesthetic theory to games. And you started with the observation, which I very much agree with, that with this kind of interactive media art, this positions the user's actions at the heart of its aesthetic form. In the sense that the aesthetic experience of engaging with one of these artworks is an experience of acting, in the same way that the aesthetic experience of a painting is an experience of seeing, for example. Now, if we're going back to really classical aesthetic theory in terms of Kant, Schopenhauer, and so on, the aesthetic experience is defined as being disinterested, in the sense of bearing no reference to any end outside itself. And in the case of most of the actions we take in games, and even in the case of many of the actions in the example you've given, the mission in particular, for example, that doesn't seem to be the case, right? There's a clear teleology, there's a clear end orientation to the actions we take. We take actions in relation to these artworks or games with a specific purpose or goal in mind. So I wonder if there's how do we overcome that? How do we still allow a space for these to be considered aesthetic experiences, even though they are performed with a clear kind of teleological orientation, a clear goal in mind?
That's what I actually try to explain, but also through the research we did with documenting these visitor experiences, to explain that this idea of oscillation. So in a way, you can't only be immersed in the systems, even if you're very much dedicated to a specific goal. So there are always these moments of reflection, and I looked into different theories, and some people say this is actually possible within two different channels, so both things can happen at the same time, but others also say they happen in a sequence, so after each other, so or they oscillate, or it's just after the game. So with the Machina X, as an example for me, in playing this Lessons of Leaking, it was very much that the game ends abruptly. So once you make this difficult democratic decision if you uncover the manipulation or not, there's a very short newsreel, and then they say, thank you for playing Machina X. And then you stand there at the moment totally disillusioned with your own thoughts, but what did I do? I mean, because or you push a fascist canceller and leaving the EU, or you support data manipulation to change the outcome of a referendum. And it's really, in this case for me, it was really afterwards that I started to reflect on the actions we had done collaboratively. But I think in other applications, and specifically in those like the Writer Spoke one, where you cycle, it's a very meditative experience actually, because you cycle for an hour, then this can also happen during